Hello! Today we're going to have a look at the Globe Swift GC-1A in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I've just bought this from Just Flight, who had the best price today on it. You can't actually buy it in Europe from the original developers. You can also buy it from SimMarket, but SimMarket have a massive markup on it for some reason. So they're almost 20% more expensive than Just Flight. Anyway, so this is the Aeroplane Heaven Swift, or Globe Swift. And it's very, very nice. There's a few little issues in this first version you can see with the glass, but it doesn't affect you when you're inside the aircraft. It's really nicely modelled, as you can see. When we look around in detail at it, there's a few switches. I'm not sure what they've done, so I'm going to be absolutely candid here. All I've done so far is had a quick look at it to make sure that the controls are, or I know where the controls are. I don't actually know how to fly it properly yet. I've not actually done a flight. So if we go and get inside, actually before we do that, let's just check the axes are mapped correctly. So we've got the ailerons, we've got the elevators, and we have the rudder. And there's no point going for flaps yet because we don't have power to anything. So let's go and look inside. So inside you can see it's very much of its era. It's very simple, but it's wonderfully modelled. There's this lovely clipboard that pulls out, and that's got a startup procedure for you to follow. I wish more people would do that. And there's little hints like where to find switches for things that aren't obvious. And there's some quick start options, but we're going to start this up just to show you us doing it. So let's go and have a look. We can remove the yoke as per normal. There's very few controls actually, there's a few buttons along here to get things started. So to begin with, we're going to push our mixture all the way in. So these are push-pull knobs across the board here. We are going to turn the magnetos on. Interestingly, the starter is a separate switch than the magnetos. So we are also going to go and turn on our avionics master switch, which you can see some of the needles moving around, and we're also going to pull the knob on the com radio and nav radio. So we're not going to use them today, but it's nice to have them there. You've got an ADF thing here. This is not a compass, neither is that one. So your compass is a binnacle compass. So again, it's of its era. So let's go and start the engine and see what happens. So we pull the starter out, and it starts very easily. So it will hold it tick over, and again I started that with idle throttle, so you don't need to introduce throttle to start the engine. It's all very straightforward. What else can we do? I'm not sure what that switch does over there. I haven't read the book yet, but we're going to just take this for a basic flight and see how it goes, to be honest. Okay, so we're at Booker Airfield. If we go for runway 24, which is down this way, you'll see the wind is headwind onto runway 24, which will suit us perfectly. The flaps on this aircraft are either up or down, so if I move my flap lever I have to move it all the way, and you will see that it has got retractable undercarriage. Also, I don't think it's the most powerful aircraft in the world, so it's going to be interesting to see how much speed we gain on the runway and whether we're able to easily take off. So let's try it. So we'll put the wheel back for the moment. Let's press F to see what the default view is like. So we're quite a long way from the instruments. If we press space, it puts us up above the nose, but again you can't see directly in front of the nose, so taxiing is going to be fun. Okay, so off the parking brake, and let's get this rolling. So the sound is wonderful. Oh, let's go and calibrate the altimeter. I'm not sure if you have to actually in this. And the compass, again, there's no point, there's nothing to calibrate because it's just a binnacle compass. So we're just going to do a couple of quick circuits around Booker. I'm going to give it a bit of backstick to force the tail wheel into the ground. It's a bit of a trick you learn with tail draggers. So the elevator, obviously the airflow over the elevator causes downward pressure, which gives you a bit more purchase on the ground with the tail wheel, which makes taxiing a lot easier, and this appears to behave in that way too. Okay, so full throttle. So we'll get in the air, we're going to do some stall tests and things like that, and then we'll get into the circuit and come in and land and see how it behaves. So it's very stable going down the runway. We're accelerating through 40 knots, coming up to 60 knots. It's not very powerful, but there's a lot of drag with the gear and the flaps, so they're going to pull back gently, and it comes up in a very stable manner. It's very, very stable, but then we are directly into the wind, so that helps. Okay, so gear up. So we can see that happening outside, and flaps up. So we're climbing away from Booker Airfield. Everything's looking very, very smooth. We haven't turned the lights on, so the light switches are hidden behind the co-pilot yoke. So if we go and turn on pitot heat as well, strobe, nav. So we should just go and have a look outside, see how those lights look. So yeah, you can see the lights blinking away now, which is all good. Okay, so let's go and turn through to 60 degrees, which will be the reciprocal of the runway direction. As we do so, we'll come off the throttle a little bit. So it's very, very easy to fly so far. You'll notice there is no autopilot. I haven't tried the key combination to see if there's a hidden autopilot, so that'll be something for other people to have a crack at. I actually prefer hand flying anyway. So we're coming around towards 90 degrees, 80, 70, and 60 degrees on the binnacle compass. So we're now on the reciprocal of the runway direction, and as you can see, the visibility out of this is fantastic. Okay, it does move around in the wind, which is what you'd expect from a small aeroplane. Let's move this yoke out of the way so we can see vertical speed here, so let's get it stable. Okay, let's go for full throttle. I'm going to pull up into a climb, and we're going to stall it on purpose. Okay, so pull the throttle back, and it dropped a wing. Okay, let's see if it will spin. It won't spin right, but it will with full elevator look. So it's rolling on its own. So we'll let go and we pull out gently. Watching the speed, we came up to 140 knots there. Okay, that was interesting. So with full elevator it span, but I had to, as soon as I let go, it stopped spinning. Okay, so we're going flat out. We're holding about 140 knots level, which is quite impressive really for a small aircraft. So let's go for a roll and see how it behaves. So we'll pull it up into a climb and just aileron roll, and look how stable that is. The nose didn't waver at all with the aileron, the drag from the ailerons. So it rolls absolutely in a straight line, which is fantastic. Okay, so back to 50% throttle. And you can see the airfield over there. We're going to turn in and do an approach and see how it behaves. So again, this visibility is absolutely wonderful. You can see so easily outside. Okay. So let's press F. So it does have this kind of fishbowl default view. I think Aeroplane Heaven quite commonly do that with their aircraft. Okay, let's get the yoke back on so you can see my inputs, if any, during the landing. Okay, so we're going to go for... going to level out slightly just to get the speed off. And go for gear down now. Let's go and see that happening. Let's go for flaps down as well. Okay, so we're high. So let's see what happens in terms of, with all of the drag of the flaps and the gear, how far hard can we descend? So you can descend pretty steeply. What about if we introduce some rudder and side slip it down? doesn't put too much of a braking input on it by side slipping, but you can still come down remarkably steeply at about 80 knots, which is quite interesting. Okay, so let's come off that side slip and just see how much the speed bleeds off. Now we're getting into the correct kind of place for an approach. It'd be interesting actually to starve the engine of fuel in flight and see if we can restart it just by reintroducing fuel, see if the propeller keeps spinning. So we'll climb out after doing this approach and see what happens. So introduced a little bit of throttle to hold on to 60 knots. You can see it's not very stable. There's turbulence obviously over the trees because of that 10 knot wind. But now we're coming over the airfield, it's a lot more stable, which is good. So introduce a bit more. And we came in a bit hard there and bounced. That's all fine. Okay, so full throttle. Tail came up very stable. I'm only using a small amount of rudder to hold it on the centre line. If I let go, it tracks slightly left. So again, gently pull back. We bounced a little bit, but we're up. So you can see it does move around. I actually like it if the aeroplanes move around because it feels more like you're actually flying something and not a robot. Okay, so gear up, flaps up, and you should see us accelerate. So 60 knots, yeah, it's accelerating quite nicely in the climb. Okay, so the thing I wanted to try, I'm going to get a little bit of height before we do it, and I'll turn back towards 60 degrees. So if we climb as we turn, and then we'll level out, and I want to cut the engine to see how it behaves if I cut the mixture in midair. So coming back round to 90 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to cut the engine. So all I've done is pulled the mixture back. So I've cut the fuel. So the propeller is turning all on its own. Now it's worth pointing out we've got the magnetos on, remember. So if we accelerate towards the ground, the propeller is still spinning, and all we're going to do is introduce fuel, and it's come back to life all on its own. So it did that very easily. Okay, that's really good to know. So let's just hold it on 50% throttle and have a look back over our shoulder towards the airfield, and let's get the gear back down, flaps down, and in we come again. The runway. I do love that this plane moves around. It actually feels like you're flying something and not just sitting on top of a robot. It's very good. So I'm just using the throttle to balance the speed and the vertical speed. So this time we'll come in over the runway, level out, and then cut the engine and see how it falls towards the floor. So coming in a little bit faster. That's kind of on purpose. So you can see that turbulence there as we go over the main road. And it stables out as we get to the airfield. Okay, so let's cut the engine and feed in back stick, and it falls quite dramatically when it gets to about 40 knots. So it fell that last bit quite quickly. Okay, so we just go around this cone here, out onto the grass. Now, have they got sounds for the grass? Yes, they do. And the aircraft's making all kinds of noises with rumbling across the ground. So you can see the suspension doing its job. It's very, very good, isn't it? Let's get those flaps back up as we taxi back. Yeah, so this is the Globe Swift from Aeroplane Heaven. Okay, let's just taxi back in. It's quite easy to handle on the ground. I have to say the modelling is really nice. Let's do this from outside so we can see the turning circle and see how good it is. Okay, so we'll turn at 19 and then come back into 18. You can see it turns very, very sharply indeed. So manoeuvring in tight airfield spaces is actually very easy with it. Okay, so parking brake on. Mixture to... Interesting. Okay, mixture to lean. So we've cut the fuel to the engine. So then all we should need to do is go and turn off the lights that we switched on earlier and turn off the magnetos, turn off the radio first, turn off the avionics master switch, and that's about it. So I'm not sure, there's lights and things you can move around in the cockpit. I've not played around with the canopy itself, so I don't know. Oh yeah, you can open the canopy. Okay, so we'll do that. So you can see that's pretty cool. So I'm presuming the sides unhinge as well somehow. I don't know. I've never stepped foot in this aircraft before, so I don't know how any of it works. It's very interesting. Oh, there you go. There are click spots on the sides to lower the canopy. Very cool. So yeah, I'm impressed. There's a shame about this issue with the glass, but other than that, it's actually really good, and it's very good value as well. So there you go. Oh, it has cowls that you can open and close. There's some levers. I've completely forgot to show that. I noticed them when I got in the aircraft. There's cowl flap switches. They are, where are they? Over here. There's plungers. So if you do that, you can see it's starting to open there. It's just opening very slowly. But yeah, so there you go. This is the Globe Swift in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So if you're interested in retro general aviation aircraft, you couldn't go further wrong with this. This is fantastic. Okay, and it's very reasonable price, as I said. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll see you again soon.